Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business, brought to you by MegaPixx Media. Joining me today is Corinne Lyall, who is broker owner of Royal LePage Benchmark in Calgary. Thanks for joining us, Corinne.
Hi, Mario. I'm happy to be here.
All right. Well, let's talk about a report that Royal LePage put out today on the housing markets across Canada, but we're going to focus obviously on Calgary. Why is the Calgary market so active still? We're into September and we're still a very active market in terms of MLS sales.
Yeah, so I can answer this. Part of what happened let's go back to 2019. So the end of 2019, we were coming out of the recession. The real estate market in Calgary was starting to recover. And we were anticipating that 2020 was actually going to be a decent year, right? What ended up happening is COVID. And what COVID helped us do is launch us out of the recession, which was great. And I would say for most of 2020, we were in this great kind of recovery market. And most of it was affecting our first-time home buyers and kind of that mid-market. But then when the spring of 2021 came and that market shifted things quite a bit, because all of a sudden now that was starting to impact the higher end price range. And some of those first-time home buyers that bought those homes would end up impacting the higher end properties, and then they were able to sell and so on and so on. But then what happened is their inventory in that mid-market really got squeezed. And so a lot of our buyers that were hoping to buy in the spring are still looking today. And in fact, in talking to our chief economist with the real estate board, Anne-Marie, who you know, Anne-Marie has even suggested most recently to us that even if we get more inventory on, which we have, but even if we get more inventory on, there is very little ability for us to be able to service the amount of buyers that are still looking, even by spring of next year. Wow. And so what that means is that we're going to be in a shortage of inventory for a little while.
Okay, let's talk about prices. What's happened to prices in the past year, and where do you expect them to go for the rest of the year?
So overall, year over year, we're at about a 10% increase, which isn't ridiculous. I mean, if you look at the rest of Canada, I think that Alberta has probably been fairly conservative, which I think, is a positive thing. I think Alberta has gone through enough of their crazy ups and downs over the booms and busts. I don't want to say those words anymore, but yeah. That having, I think, a conservative increase is good. It's good. We're not then going to see, if the market all of a sudden were to shift, that we're not going to see that then the bust, right? And so what we've experienced is something that I think is sustainable. And what we're probably going to experience is a couple of more percentage over the next 6 months or so. We'll see what spring brings, but I would think until the end of the year, we might see a slight increase, specifically more in the detached home sector more than anything else. The condo market is still, we're still lagging a bit there for sure.
Yeah, let's talk, you mentioned the inventory. Let's talk a little bit about that. Why have we been challenged? Well, it's across the country, really. It's an issue right from coast to coast. But in Calgary, why have we been in this situation for a while now, where the inventory is low and we keep looking for more inventory in the market?
I think there's a number of factors that are impacting that. Number one would be that there are so with the lack of inventory, if you've got people buying into that mid range and somebody wants to move up to the next range, and if there's a lack of inventory at that higher range, then some people just don't want to move, right? Because they're like, well, where am I going to go?
Yeah.
Right. So there's that. There's the lack of immigration that we've experienced in the past. Right. So since COVID, we've really immigration has come to a halt. Right. Other than some interprovincial immigration, which we're starting to see some of that. but there's that as well. So there's, in general, I think what's happened is that, there's just more people wanting to move than there is ability for people to be able to move. And then you think about too, at the very higher ranges, is that some of those people still haven't recovered their money. So if we're talking into the millions of dollars, right? Some of those people that purchased, like we're probably at about 2012, 2013 levels. So they just don't have the ability to make that move. They haven't been able to build that equity to be able to make that next move. So there's some people that are just not moving. And then you layer on the fear of COVID, right? So some people just don't want to move because of COVID. And they, especially if they're already in a situation where, they feel that they're not in a high density area, then some of those people just don't want to make a decision. And I would say that would be a sort of at the higher demographics, right? That those people are just not moving at all.
Corinne, I'm going to ask you a double-edged question here, but we'll start with the first part. What's your advice for sellers these days?
Probably the same advice that we've given them forever, right? Is that, hire a professional realtor. So let's just start with that. Somebody that's going to be able to give you some good advice about whether or not it is a good decision for you to move right now, right? I always like to tell, in the past when I was selling full time, I'd tell my clients, I'm in the business of buying and helping you buy and sell real estate, but sometimes it's just not a good decision, right? And it depends on where you're at when you purchased your home. Right. So I think that number one, hire a good professional and understand what are the reasons around why you're moving. Are you moving in a reaction to what's happening in terms of COVID, or are you moving because of a lifestyle choice? And maybe not to react so quickly to the circumstances that are around you, right? And ask yourself, is this a good idea for you now? Because just like buying a COVID puppy, you might not want that puppy in a couple of years. I don't know.
Yeah. What about on the flip side, advice to buyers?
Buyers are in a different situation because of it being a seller's market and the lack of inventory. You've got to prepare yourself that, first of all, you might be buying at a higher price range than you would have thought, maybe a year or two ago, right? So you got to prepare yourself for that, because you might not be the only buyer that is considering the property that you're looking at. So really make sure that you're in a financially solid situation, and that you're talking to your mortgage broker or mortgage lender about what makes sense for you. Have a bit of buffer. So in case you do have to overbid for the home that you're interested in, that you have that movement to be able to do that. Right? Because there's a good chance that you might be bidding along with other people.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because I know in the past few months, there's been, rumblings out there that we've seen multiple offers, houses being sold for quite a bit more than list price. Is there a sense of urgency out there for many buyers because of that lack of inventory and the demand?
I think every buyer has a different situation, and sometimes we create a false sense of urgency too. FOMO, the fear of missing out, comes into play.
Yeah.
Right. So, again, it's taking stock of, is this really a true sense of urgency, or is it something that you're feeling because you've missed out on previous properties that you've bidded on? And then it creates a sense of panic. Right. I mean, there might be circumstances where someone has to move. Maybe they're at the end of their lease, or maybe they've sold their house that they're in, and so they absolutely have to move. But I really hope that they've taken the time to plan that out well. Right. And so, there's that.
Okay, super. Last question I have for you, Corinne, and it's kind of a different thing, but I'm just curious. Where are we at with open houses these days? Like, are they still going on? And what is the frequency of them because of obviously the situation we're in?
What I tell my agents, as I said, make sure that you're talking to your clients about the different scenarios, right? Give them choices. Say, how would you like your open house? First of all, do you want an open house? Do you want the public to come through your home? Secondly, if you do, then how would you like that to be run? Is it important to you that the people are vaccinated that are coming through the home?
Mm.
Is it important to you that obviously that they wear masks? Do you want me to supply gloves as well? How many people at a time? Right. So we really try to talk to our clients and ask them what their level of comfort is, because everybody's is quite different.
Yeah.
And it's important too, as a consumer going through somebody's open house, to not be offended if we as professionals are asking you for your contact information, right? It's important that we do the contact tracing, and it's important to the seller to know who's been through their home, especially in the times of COVID, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right, super. Well, thanks a lot for joining us today, Corinne.
Oh, thank you for having me, Mario.
All right, super. That was Corinne Lyall, who is broker owner of Royal LePage Benchmark in Calgary. This has been Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business, brought to you by MegaPixx Media. Thanks for joining us.